You have entered the Propaganda Report with Brad Binkley. We have a special Sunday evening show for you all. Trust has eroded in elections nationwide over the past decade or so, with many people losing faith in the election systems that are the foundation of our democracy. And in each state, the position who oversees the effective operations of elections is the Secretary of State, which is exactly why Brad Raffensperger, the former Secretary of State here in Georgia, got so much attention in 2020 and 2024, something that he loved to get, especially in the left-leaning media, as he was the overseer of the controversial elections that became the center of attention and division over the past 7 years or so now. He was on that famous phone call that led to the Fulton County Trump indictment. He was the one who put the Dominion voting machines here. He is the guy who personally I think is very, very corrupt, has a very, very strange background, but I won't speculate too much about that. All I know is that his reign as Secretary of State ended in a controversial one, or it will end in a controversial one. And whoever fills that position has the job of rebuilding trust in elections starting here in Georgia. And tonight we have a special guest here who is running to fill that job, to bring trust back to elections. Candidate for Georgia Secretary of State, Ted Metz. How you doing, Ted?
I'm doing good, Brad.
You sound great.
We can hear each other now. Everything's great.
You sound great. So
Thank you.
tell me, how are you going to rebuild trust in elections?
It's going to be so easy. For the last 14 years, I think you may remember that I've been in the election integrity space.
I do.
You know, I started out recording. I can't stand the feedback. Garland Favorito all those years ago.
Well, let me tell people who don't know you, because I think the context is important. Ted, you have one ear because of
Hell, and that's why I wear my hair long, because
yes. So Ted has to wear things to help him hear, which can provide feedback for him. But I think that's important context for people to know.
I appreciate that, Brad. I'm gonna. I wish I could do that. Okay, but I'm not going to. All right. So anyway, what am I going to do to restore election trust? Since I've been in the election space for like 14 years, I have been studying Title 21, which is Georgia's election code, and everything in Georgia election code reflects that we have not had a valid, lawful election since we went away from hand-counted paper ballots. None of the laws on the books have been changed to remove us from hand-marked paper ballots counted on election day at the precinct. So that's all we need to do is go back to that law that's already on the books, and elections will be restored. And that will help us restore our republic, our democratically elected leaders in our republic.
So what is the argument against it that those in
the argument
have been trying to make?
Okay, maybe, let's see, before Ed Lindsay was removed from the state election board, that was probably 5 years ago, their argument was that paper ballots, somebody can just walk in with a stack of paper ballots and put them in the ballot box. But if the elections are done lawfully according to Georgia law, each ballot is pre-printed and it has a stub with a number on it. When you check out a ballot, basically they look for the stubs on the ballot. They don't know who's got what stub, but each ballot has a serial number that matches the stub. So when you put your ballot in the ballot box and there's stub in the stub box, they say, okay, we got 37,000 stubs and 37,000 ballots. They know that it's a balanced election. So there can't really be any cheating if it's conducted properly, which means counting the inputs and the outputs at the precinct on election day. So there you go.
So how do you rig an election like that then? Because that's the problem. If I want to rig an election and there's hand-counted ballots, what am I supposed to do?
You can't. That's the whole point, is you cannot rig a paper ballot election. unless
How
you're
do you
doing
replace it though? So they have the Dominion voting machines that were put in by Brad Raffensperger. So what's the practical steps to, if you're elected, to replacing those Dominion voting machines?
I thought you'd ask me something like that, and that gets right back to Georgia law. And if I could share some things with you, I will be happy to do that. Let me figure out where the share screen is. Share screen. I'm not ready to do that because I didn't get prepared. But the long and the short of that is, remember that we first got electronic voting machines under Kathy Cox in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the Diebold machines, the direct recording electronics. And those machines had absolutely no audit trail. So how on earth were you able to audit an election? You could not. So it was 2020, and Totenberg in the Curling versus Raffensperger case finally had a holding that said our Georgia election machines were unconstitutional. So then they replaced them with the Dominion system, which was just as bad as the Diebold DRE system.
That Garland warned them about. Garland Favorito actually warned Brad Raffensperger.
He certainly did. He learned, and he and I both were testifying at all the committee hearings, and even the SAFE committee hearing prior to the selection of the machinery, that no electronic system is safe. Well, I don't know how many people have ever had a top secret clearance in either the military or other branch of government. Anything that's top secret or above is only on paper for eyes only. There's no electronic records of any sort for any high-level top secret documents. Our elections are supposed to be secret ballots, right? And secret ballots on paper is really the only safe method of having an immutable, uncorruptible election. Despite the fact that other people will still argue, like back in the day when people would just like walk into the polling place with, stacks of ballots under their shirt and just dump them in the ballot box. Yeah. You can't do that. If you walk into a polling place with your photo ID to identify you as a U.S. citizen qualified voter, the county you walk in and you sign a certification that you are the voter. They issue you a ballot. You vote the ballot in pencil or pen, and you return it to the ballot box. You put the stub with the serial number in the stub box, and then at the end of the election day, which is just one day, the first Tuesday after the first Monday.
I thought it was 3 weeks.
Well, that's election season, and that's going to go away soon enough. So anyway, at the end, the poll workers know how many people came in, how many ballots were issued, so they should know how many ballots were actually collected. And if the numbers don't match, then they can audit on the spot. And does that answer your question?
Well, so it answers my question how trust is, how to fix the election system.
Okay, now how do you trust the election?
How do you get people, because people have lost trust, and rebuilding trust, that can be a difficult thing. So how do you say?
Okay, now I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
I was at share screen, this one right here, share. I was down at the Fulton County warehouse where the FBI took the boxes of election materials. And this guy, his name is Mark Cook. Mark Cook is actually one of the data analysts in Colorado who's helping Tina Peters. And this is the website. It's called A-Count-Able. So the URL is a-count-able.org, O-R-G. And essentially they have a demonstration here where you actually have the printed ballot. You are issued the printed ballot with a stub. So the voter takes the ballot, exercises his right to vote, and then places his ballot in the ballot box. And then at the end of the voting day, they get out this thing called the tally sheet. They have two people, one person that actually reads the vote, and two people that count the vote on the tally sheet.
Okay.
They do small batches of 25 ballots. And when they're done counting the ballots, or when they're through reading the results on each of the ballots, then they go through and they both tally sheets are added up. And you see across the top, there's numbers.
Yeah.
1 through 34. That's the races. That has to do with the races. I don't wonder if I can blow this up. So each race is a number. So like the first question on the ballot is number 1. So if it's a yes, they mark a yes on number 1. On number 2, question number 2, they mark.
Well, let me ask you
number
this.
1.
So
okay,
is the idea of this to make it easy for people to verify who they voted for and who others might have voted for? Because I know previously there was a whole idea of, you scan your thing into the machine and then you don't necessarily get that.
You're still talking about machines. Let's completely forget about machines now.
But what I want to know is,
let me explain.
I don't trust elections, and I see that, but like
let me explain some more.
Easy for me. Yeah.
Let me explain some more then. The way this is designed to do the paper counting method, you have 2 people looking at the ballot and 2 people recording the vote. Just like it says in 21-2-437, which is Georgia law, that on election day, after the closing of the polls, the poll manager reads aloud the candidate's name who has been elected for a vote and calls it out, and 2 talliers mark it on the tally sheet. Okay. So what the demonstration, I'll have a video up later because I didn't have time to compose it today. Essentially, you got 4 people at a table with a small batch of ballots, 25 ballots. They go through the ballots number by number, like I was just showing you a moment ago. So like for election slot number 1, it's yes or no, they just make dots on that sheet. The person who's calling out the election winner essentially is being watched by a person who's making sure that he's calling out the right name. And then they have the 2 talliers who are marking it on their sheets. When they get done with that batch, they look at the numbers at the bottom of the sheet, and if they match, then it's matched. And they do this on camera, live on camera.
Okay.
I guess the originator of the system says first you scan the ballots, and then you sort them into small batches. Then you make the batches, you take them to the counters. And then after they're finished with that on film, on camera, live stream camera, then they put the banners or the ballots through the scanner again, so you can make sure that the ballots that went in are the same ballots that were counted.
So that's interesting.
And that is absolute proof that the ballots that were counted were the same ballots that were given back to the system, with an absolute chain of custody.
Right.
Again, at the precinct on election day, live on TV, with people there to watch it happen.
And so that was the question I had before you answered it. Is it going to be on camera, like fully transparent? And I think that is an interesting idea, because everything in politics right now is a spectacle or a show, and it's like, which one do I trust? And it sounds like you can kind of turn the counting not to a spectacle, but to something that's more transparent, and people will be interested in it. How do we get them engaged in it? How do we get them what kind of setting is it? Paint the picture for me.
It's just like, well, we did this. This is the way we did elections ever since we first had Pilgrims land on Plymouth Rock in 1620. They basically have a piece of paper. They write some names down. They'd sit together in town hall, and they'd count. They'd read off the ballots, and it was a public event. they still do the same thing in England and France, where all the people like gather together in a big hall, and they go ballot by ballot and read it off and make tick marks on the
Okay.
tally sheet.
Yeah.
Same thing here. There are a lot of people who actually do show up at the polls after the closing of the polls to observe. You've heard of election watchers, election
Yeah.
observers. I've done that before. Unfortunately, not at the polling place, but at the at the central command center where they have all the ballots, where they
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
end up and go into a database which is manipulatable, easily
Yeah.
accessible.
It's
And
like a break in the chain of custody that you mentioned if it's not in the public eye, kind of.
right, because you've taken it right out of the ballot box by a poll officer and counted in public. Okay, here's 25 ballots. This is batch number one. Here's batch number one. They give it to the counters and talliers. They count it and say, okay, here's 25 ballots. We've counted them. Here you have them back. That's batch number one. Let's go on to batch number two. So it is absolutely in the public eye and is publicly observable. And the public is encouraged to participate in not only the counting, but watching the counting. And you can watch online.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
And verify everything for yourself.
So I love that concept. It makes me think of a trial that everybody is interested in. That if it's not like the Charlie Kirk trial, if it is not transparent and public, then there's going to cause a lot of division afterwards, rightfully so. And so you put this out in front of everybody, and I like that a whole lot. So the way that I've been thinking about all this stuff is how do we get maximum attention to these kind of ideas? And I'd be interested in hearing. So you're running as a Republican, correct?
That is correct.
Very good. Okay, so I'd be interested in either maybe helping down the road or knowing how you're going to approach getting attention to that and manifesting that in people's minds. Because we have a comment here who from the Grubinator. He says that it's difficult to follow for somebody who's for anybody who is not as into this as you are, but it sounds promising, and I agree. It's one of those things where it's like the normal person with all the attention, everywhere, all these different screens. How do we capture them and make this the most interesting thing for them? How do we make this?
I should have the video. Hopefully, I hope to have the video of today's demonstration done.
Tell us about that.
Okay, well, again, we went down. There's a guy named Mark Cook. Mark Cook is like the orchestrator of this particular methodology, and Mark is traveling around the country. He's going to be at the Capitol, I believe, on Tuesday. I'm not sure what time yet, but he'll be giving live demonstrations of this.
Okay.
On the website that I shared a little while ago, there is a video of the entirety of the process. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know how good it is. If it's better than my video, I'll just post it. But anyway, the Fulton County warehouse down in Fairburn that was raided by the FBI, where there's all that controversy about the confiscation of the election materials from the 2020 election. They were supposed to get the original manifest was like 703 boxes, and they only found 646 boxes. That's another curiosity. So anyway, that was like the venue for today's event. It just seems like the only people that showed up are like the diehards in the election integrity movement.
Mm-hmm.
Garland Favorito was there, which was nice to see him.
How many people would you say were there if you had to guess?
22 maybe total.
Yeah.
So they set it up where they had 2 tables with 4 chairs each, a sample batch of ballots of 25. They had the tally sheet, and essentially they just sat down. One person read the name on the ballot. 2 people marked it down. One person was making sure that the name was right. All right.
Was there a host kind of like facilitating what was going on, or were people just watching it?
Well, Mark Cook was the host, so to speak. But the other person that really, I guess, organized it for today was our famous friend, Jason Frazier. Mm. And if people don't know Jason Frazier, he's the Republican appointee to the Fulton County Board of Elections and Registration, who has yet to be seated. And apparently Fulton County is being fined $10,000 a day for not allowing him to take his seat. So that Jason Frazier. Jason,
Yeah.
like myself, is also a data analyst, like computer geek. We'll talk more about that. I've been a
That's an
computer geek all
important
my
fact,
life.
actually. I should have brought that up earlier, that you have a background in analyzing these types of things, which is a qualification for this position.
Well, we'll get back to that as well. But anyway, so Jason was there and his wife and all, lots of people I've known for a long time. So it was kind of fun. So anyway, 4 tables with 2 tables, 4 chairs, 4 people, 2 people, 1 person reading out the ballot results while 1 person was observing to make sure he got the right name or whatever, and then 2 people marking the tally sheets. And when they completed their batch of 25, they did the totals of the results. And if the 2 tally sheets worked out just right, then it was counted right. They did make a couple of mistakes where someone like marked in the wrong spot, but it was really easy to catch because the numbers didn't match. The column that the numbers didn't match in, they went back and they went 1 through 25 of the ballots and they found where the mistake was. It was really simple. It was so easy to correct. In the way they're using these electronics to like complicate matters, it's taken 2 to 3 years to find out that there was problems with the count.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Again, being fully transparent, being done in public, being done live streamed with the step of scanning the ballots so you can see what ballots are, and so you can like do your own count at home, and then scanning the ballots again when they're done to make sure to ensure the public that the ballots hadn't been swapped.
Right.
I mean, that you can't get any more transparent than that, on top of doing it in public in front of an audience who can like stand there and watch them do it.
I think that's a great idea. I really do. I think
it's again,
attention to it.
It's forward into the past, had the same way they've done it since 1620 in America.
And so for me, like I said, it's how do you make this the most interesting thing to take the attention away from others? Because the forces that are against you that want to keep those electronic machines, that don't want this to happen. The last thing they want is transparency, and trying to capture attention among that. I wonder if you have any campaign stunts, or you maybe considering anything to maybe cause a stir, to bring some attention to like something like this.
Well, yeah, I'm going to stand on a billboard naked for 27 hours.
Hell, all right. Let me know.
We're going to figure that out. And that's something else we'll get back to in a little bit, because as you may recall, I was nominated by the Libertarian Party to run for Secretary of State back in January 17th. Mm. And after that, I'd went home and said, I'm not going to work that hard with the Libertarian Party where I know I'm not going to get any press coverage.
Right.
I'm not going to get any donations.
Right.
I'm never going to get 80,000 ballot petition signatures. So I'm just going to sit down and do nothing. And then, I'm going to get a little philosophical here and maybe even a little bit religious, but
go ahead. Yeah.
The Spirit moved me to talk to my friends in high places, and essentially they said, if you're feeling moved to run, you should run, but run as a Republican. Mm-hmm. And I went into the Republican Party with the Ron Paul movement back in 2012, and I actually did work my way up.
You've run for governor. For those listening who might not know, you ran for governor against Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp.
Yeah, well, that was in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was.
You're not new to it, so people should know you've been on the debate stage.
Well, I also ran against Raffensperger in 22.
Yeah.
But going back to switching from the Republican Party with the Ron Paul movement to the Libertarian Party in 2014, I actually had an opportunity to run as a Libertarian for insurance commissioner. And for those of you who don't know, I did retire as a financial planner. I was a chartered senior financial planner, and I did insurance and that sort of thing, and even have a college degree to back that up. So that's something that I knew that field. And so having an opportunity to run against Ralph Hudgens, of all people, getting stuff done. He did this commercial, and this is when I started realizing that people that are in high places are there not because they know anything, but they're there because the party placed them there as essentially puppets to do whatever the administration wants them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I stayed with the Libertarian Party until the Libertarian National Convention in 2024. I went there. I didn't participate. I actually went there as a journalist instead.
I saw you there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a cool convention until until the eventual presidential candidate came away a winner.
Chaotic.
and that's when I said this I cannot put up with this stuff anymore. Actually I left the Libertarian Party
because
I just showed up at the convention. That's why I left it.
Really?
Yes.
What I have a soft spot for libertarians because if I'm going to be any party, it's going to be that way that I'm leaning. But I don't join parties. But right there, it was never more apparent that the convention to me. And I tell people, I was like, I never seen so many grifters trying to co-opt the division.
Oh my God!
In one room.
Well, and that's the other thing is like since Joe Jorgensen ran. Since then, we've been infiltrated by people who are like far leftists, and they've been moving that party more and more to the left, which I disagree with, because in my heart I am a constitutional conservative, which sort of puts me somewhere above the Republican Party, but now outside the Libertarian Party. Being a Mises Hayek kind of like economist on the one hand, and also being pragmatic, etc.
Right.
What Ron Reagan said, I'm a Ron Reagan Republican. Ron Reagan said that libertarianism is the heart of republicanism. And I still fully support that. Small government, no taxes, laissez-faire, leave us alone, get the hell out of my life, let me play with my guns and my gold. And, I almost said a 4-letter word. So anyway, that's why I'm running as a Republican, is because that's really where my roots are. That's really the way I grew up as a Republican. The only reason I left the Republican Party was because I didn't like the way they treated Ron Paul at the RNC in 2012. Remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, neither the left or right ever treated him very well.
Well, and this is pretty much typical of politics in general. At the RNC they had like 3 states delegates that would have given him the right percentage of the vote to get a nomination, and what happened? Those 3 buses of delegates from those states, they got taken on a joyride, and they didn't show up until like 4 hours late because the bus drivers got lost.
That's crazy. I mean, it's just so crazy.
It is crazy.
What they'll do. It's like the toilet problem with the water in Fulton County.
Oh yeah, we had major flooding, and it was just like a leaky urinal.
Right. And some of that stuff's coming out, whether or not I think people have made up their minds on one side or the other. So I don't know what evidence is actually going to do at this point. It's almost like evidence doesn't have much of an impact anymore. It does with some people, but when it comes to the reporting on things. But I do have some more questions about.
Okay, go ahead.
So the chats here, I want to get back to the libertarian thing. I have a couple more questions about that. But so Grubinator here, he's a super smart guy and very interested in this stuff. He wanted to know, is there a fail within, so if there's a fail within a batch, does the entire batch in the hand counting, does it get restarted?
Oh, if he's talking about the method that I was describing earlier.
Yeah.
No, because you can go right back immediately and find what the error was. And
this is like one ballot, and you could. I wonder if there's a way to show the error because you're doing the demonstration
absolutely.
live. Yeah.
I haven't watched the demonstration that was done on a-count-able.com.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I can't. I can't
tell me that again.
Right
I'll pull the video up. Maybe we can find it.
a-count-able.com. Able. A countable. A-count-able.
A-count able. A-count able. Is there another hyphen in there or just one?
There's a-count-able.com.
All right. It makes me think it's well, it's not pulling up. All right,
But
we'll find it.
from what I was told, the video is like 10 minutes long.
Yeah, we'll play it. We'll find it. We'll play it. I'll cut some clips out of it. And we'll cut it together with some of this.
Yeah, I'm like I say, I'm gonna put up my video that I recorded today of Mark Cook actually explaining.
Like my question about it is, and I'm gonna look at that after the show, and see how the impression it has on me is. Again, I'm just putting ideas out there because I know you, Ted. Like I know that you have your intent is good, and I know that you want to fix things. I know you're not like a lot of these grifters that run for office, and so
I've got skills in this, and remember,
and you're good at it. Yeah.
Remember the election podcast-a-thon that we did?
Mm-hmm.
When was that? 21 or 22 at the whatever.
Is it a bar downtown?
Something the blind monk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, you've been there. So I see Ted at every time I go to a libertarian event, every time I go to an election integrity event, Ted is there. Ted is everywhere. Ted has run for office. He has experience. He was in the military when he was younger. He has a background in understanding this stuff and technology wise, and he's not trying to con anybody like a lot of these people are. And so when I know somebody like that who's running to try and do something that's necessary, my inclination is to just throw things out there that's like. Where my skill set is, how are we going to bring attention to this idea that doesn't have so much attention, and what kind of demonstrations can be done? And so that's a
right. Let's see if we can. Oh, that won't let me do that.
It's there a little bit. Okay,
nah, it's not going to let me show you the picture of the. I'm not sure how I can. That's on my phone, but anyway, I took a picture of the tally sheet.
I'm just putting it out. You send it to me later, and I'll overlay it on the video, and I'll edit it and send it to you, and you can use that as a ad. Are you doing like any campaign ads or other?
Well, not yet. I hadn't really finished the other story about having like the path laid out before me from God essentially has pushed me towards running. So I was actually on the phone driving back from my dad's house in Florida Sunday, March 3rd or 2nd, or maybe March 1st. Anyway, it was Sunday before qualifying week. I wasn't, I hadn't done anything to prepare for an election yet. So Sunday was when I had like a 6-hour drive. So I talked to a bunch of my friends. Especially in the Republican Party. I talked to like all the old guard in the Libertarian Party and explained to them my strategy was going to, start doing this, doing a campaign, but from the get-go saying, I'm never going to get the ballot signatures, so I'm going to be a write-in. And when I was explaining that strategy to my Republican friends, I say, you'll never get elected as a write-in. Just sign up. Just go and be a Republican. All these people have known me like 15 years or more. They all know how Republican I actually am. So so I said, okay, fine. So I sold a piece of gold and to get the money for the qualifying fee. And I went down and I had Derek Grayson, remember T-Mott? Mm-hmm. T-Mott actually came down to the Capitol with me to sign up, and I, signed all the paperwork and paid him the money, and I'm off to the races. And then since then, of course, you have to get all kinds of paperwork in. You have to get an EIN and a bank account and all that sort of things before you can start doing a donation platform.
Right.
So I'm still waiting on a donation platform. So I have done several events so far where I've collected some cash money, but I definitely need donations before I can start doing any sort of advertising.
Where can people do that?
I'm tedmetz.com.
Right.
Donate. They can send me a check right now. As soon as I get the platform up and running, I've already done the application. It takes like 5 or 6 days for the platform to become active and approved. So I can't take online credit cards yet, but And apparently, since the bank account is still, I don't know, it's not in their system yet. I tried to Zelle myself some money. Zelle might work under my telephone number. I'll have that on my website by the end of the night.
People
So,
don't realize how difficult it is to there's a lot of hurdles to get over to run for office.
oh
Like
God,
this.
and like endless paperwork
Hmm.
and financial reporting and, ethics commission filings and all sorts of stuff.
And
It,
bigger
it
candidates have people to do all that for them.
Right. So I also need volunteers. I need volunteers for social media. One of the strategies I do have is to do digital advertising. So if anyone out there is listening to this podcast, I have contact forms at tedmetz.com to do the digital, like if, like a pre-Rumble advertisement when you click on the video later, the ads that come up, that
Hmm.
kind of digital advertising would be great. If anybody knows how to do that. I've already talked to the iHeartRadio about radio ads. I don't really know about print ads. I just finished my logo, my beautiful logo. Um, I haven't really even announced on social media that I'm actually running, an actual viable candidate. Again, I've done several events and explain my position, which I want to finish my how I'm going to fix all this in a
Okay.
minute. But everyone has been very supportive and really likes what I'm saying about how we're going to fix the entirety of Georgia government. And
Yeah,
with
I
that
think it's a great thing.
segue, um, I've already confessed to being a nerd, but I haven't confessed to being a scholar. I've been studying Georgia law now since like 2014 when I first ran for
Hmm.
insurance commissioner, just so I know how everything works. Of course, we have the Georgia Constitution. Well, let's first go. Yeah, 6 years in the Navy, and my oath was to support the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I still take that oath seriously. Um, and to just go a little bit back further, I grew up as an Air Force brat. My dad retired as a colonel in the Air Force. Ever since I was young, we moved all the time. I lived in 13 states before I was 11. I went to 3 different high schools. And then I went to like 4 different colleges. I did study in college, worked my way through college for 19 years just because I had a curiosity that I couldn't, and I couldn't quench my curiosities until after my first son was born in 1991. And then I finally just said, okay, I think I've had enough now. um, so in all that time growing up, we had 2 constants in my life was going to church and doing Boy Scouts. So I grew up doing Boy Scouts and I did community service, and I kind of grew up with the heart of serving the kingdom of God. I know that may sound weird coming from an old guy like me, but that's been my whole life, is serving the kingdom. I am a child of God. I know I'm a child of God. I know everyone else is my brother and sister. And so community service is something that's very important, and like totally forgotten that this is one of the root fundamental founding principles of America is community, and community through the service of God. And what we're into right now is a battle of good versus evil. And to fix the evil, we need to bring God back into the equation and root out the evil. That may turn some people off, but that's the bottom line, is we have a lot of evil people doing a lot of evil things that are self-serving to them and their cause. Thank God for Doge and getting most of the NGO funding cut off. And you look at look at Minnesota, look at California, all the money, taxpayer money, is being collected and distributed and going back into the campaigns, and they're tearing America apart. So how do we stop them from tearing America apart? We get people involved in elections again. We get people involved in government. We get people in actually understanding how the Constitution works, which is the highest law of the land.
I mean, that right
Secondly,
there is important. Most people have younger people, no idea how the Constitution works.
well, and so the funny thing is, like, you talk to a what are they, Zennials? not the millennials,
Yeah,
not Generation X.
right.
And they say, oh, well, yeah, the Constitution was written by a bunch of old white slave owners, which is so wrong because the average age of the founding fathers was 37, and
Yeah.
not all of them owned slaves, and most of them didn't want to own slaves, but there was a British law that forced them to house slaves. You know, this whole thing about indentured servants and blah, blah, blah. You know, they knew it was wrong, and that's why they did the compromise in the Constitution, because the Northerners didn't want the Southerners to have all of their, you know, the slaveholders have all those people counted in their census, because they get more representation, right, even though those people couldn't vote. And originally, when the Constitution was written, the only people that had the right to vote were landowners. But that's another story. So let's talk about the Constitution as the highest law of the land. Secondly is the Georgia Constitution. And third, of course, is the law on the books known as the Official Code of Georgia. As Secretary of State, I would very much like to make sure that everyone has access to all of our founding documents, all of the law on the Secretary of State's website, along with a civics course that has to be passed in order to pass high school. Because if you don't know civics, if you don't know what the founding documents say, if you don't know the reason for America, for European refugees, essentially from religious persecution, moving to America to be free and live free, that's what America is about. And, you know, all this mass importation of people who don't have those same feelings should not be here. If they want to have some other set of law or some others, whatever, they can either like buy into the American dream, or they can not come here in the first place. But I got
let me say something there. I think that's important with the civics understanding of how elections work. What I've noticed over the past 6 years or so is the exploitation of people's lack of knowledge of how the voting system works, and the exploitation of their lack of knowledge of how the voting rolls work. And we even see that recently in coming from the left and the right. But so it pains me when I see it coming from the right, because when I see someone on the right exploiting the lack of voter knowledge in a certain state, and then people running with it, and it's something that's obviously you can disprove it, then that discredits people. And so helping people understand how stuff works, an example I'm thinking about is Nick Shirley, to be honest with you. So Nick Shirley's done some good work, but Nick Shirley also put out some videos in Minnesota, which he was talking about a UPS store or whatever. And the laws in Minnesota and in left-leaning states are different than laws in other states. And what he was trying to say that was fraud was not fraud at all, and it was easy to disprove that it was not fraud if you actually read their voting laws on my show. And I was like, look, I'm sorry. He either doesn't know or he's misleading people, but it's the only reason this works for a viral thing is because of people's lack of understanding of these laws. And the clarity of how it works can prevent that from happening, in my opinion. And I'd like to see an effort towards that. Does that make any sense?
Well, it does make some sense, but here in Georgia, to kind of address that, the law says that if you're registering to vote, you must have a valid residential address. You cannot use a post office box or anything like that. And when we have I forgot what Kim Brooks told me on the numbers, but we have hundreds of thousands of people that are registered in post office boxes, and that's not a valid voter registration. But I'm going to get back to that in a minute. But let me go back for just a second and say that the other part of that, getting back to the Constitution, the law of the land, and all that, the other thing that people don't understand is how government is supposed to work, how it's organized, who has authorities to do what, and that sort of thing. And a sterling example of that is the federal courts are limited in authority and limited in scope. And we've had so many federal judges around the country issuing edicts that they have no legal authority to issue.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah, having people understand the role and the function and the authorities and the limitations of each branch of government is extraordinarily important in holding them accountable. For example, the most important passage in the Constitution are the transmittal papers, also known as the preamble to the Bill of Rights. And the preamble to the Bill of Rights basically said that the delegates from the several states have decided that certain additional declaratory and restrictive statements shall be added to ensure the beneficence of this endeavor. And what does a declaratory and restrictive statement mean? The whole Constitution is a restriction on government. It very plainly says that if it's not mentioned in the Constitution, the federal government does not have authority to dip into it, and rights are reserved for either the states or the people. So our federal government is so far out of bounds. If people understood how far out of bounds they were, there'd be revolution by the morning. So getting back to what do we need to do? We need to teach people how government is supposed to work, the limits of and scope of their authorities, and then holding elected officials accountable to the rules of the road, which is small, limited government. So as Secretary of State, I think that's a very important function of the Secretary of State, is to make sure that people understand how government is actually designed to work. So that's one thing about how am I going to restore trust in government, is like making sure that people understand how it works.
So do you have a plan for that type of education?
Sure. Just like put it on the website.
Put it on the website.
Using the Ron Paul curriculum. It's easy.
The Ron Paul curriculum is great. And so what I'm thinking.
Okay, let me go ahead.
How do we get it to go? How do we make a spark with it to go Instagram, TikTok? And I know this younger generation, but that also they're a voting generation. They need to know this stuff. And right now,
you know what we need to do is like do the old Sesame Street videos, like how does a bill become a bill?
No, you're not. I mean, something. That's
the answer is money.
Yeah, it needs to be this type of out of the box thinking where it's like, how do we combine what we can learn about the modern communication with the Ron Paul education that you're talking about, and make it something that is, instead of going to watch a bunch of AI videos of people with 3 heads or whatever on TikTok, they're like, oh, this is the most entertaining and interesting thing to me. And it's a challenge. I know it's a challenge, but I think that is, if we want to save it, like you're saying, which I think you have the right ideas, it's like, how do we communicate that's effective for this generation?
Right. And that's something that is something that's creative and something that I could accomplish, no problem. But getting back to how do we get our government back to the people, under Georgia Constitution and under Title 50 is basically describes the authorities and limitations of each of the executive branch officers and roles of government. And then in Title 21 is the election code. Title 50 doesn't give the Secretary of State any authority to run elections. Title 21 doesn't give the Secretary of State any authority to run elections. The role for the Secretary of State is extraordinarily limited to making sure that the candidates are valid candidates, to create a legal paper ballot, and to make sure that the election returns are certifiable. And that's pretty much all the Secretary of State's role is. He does have a role to provide a uniform method of voting, but I don't think that is valid, because the federal preemption of having paper ballots marked in pencil or pen or by voting machine, all else being of no account, is the law. But let me finish that other thought and I'll get back to that. In Georgia law, elections, including voter registrations, are county functions. The counties are responsible for holding the elections in the precinct on election day.
Mm-hmm. Most people don't realize that.
I know people don't know that. And essentially the Secretary of State's office has usurped authorities that are not granted by the law. So by returning voter registration to the counties, we won't have all this voter roll ridiculous crap, because a lot of the election fraud, there's two things. Voter fraud is one thing. That's when one voter votes more than once. Election fraud is when a group of people actually manipulate the elections. And we already know, well, I won't go any further than that, because there are still election deniers or election fraud deniers out there.
Well, yeah. So I'll say it for you. You have people who will just say, "Oh, it was incompetence, mass incompetence."
Oh, well,
is what they'll say.
there's a lot of others that say it didn't exist. You're crazy to think that. So, getting the voter roll maintenance and registration back to the county level takes all of the international actors out of the voter roll manipulation. Returning elections back to the counties means that the counties are the ones that are responsible to make sure that the votes are counted properly and certified.
Tell us how the international. That's interesting. So right now, how does that international impact happen, and how does this prevent that from happening?
Okay, well, you've heard of ERIC, the electronic registration and information system.
I have, but tell everybody what it is.
And you also, well, it's we've gotten off of that, and now we have something else. I think they call it Jarvis. Yeah, which is the Georgia election system, or the election registration management system. Yeah, and believe it or not, here getting back to the authorities of the Secretary of State, the Secretary of State did like a $50 million contract with a division of Salesforce that did not exist before he wrote the contract, to maintain our voter database on the cloud, on the Salesforce cloud.
That's crazy. That's crazy for those listening. Salesforce, what's the dude who runs Salesforce? Epstein Island guy who ran a bunch of the guy who did the Alabama experiment election, where he literally is the only proven Russian interference, which was a bunch of British people actually interfering in a Russian election back in an American election, pretending to be Russian bots back in 2017. It's called the Alabama experiment. Look it up. And it was the guy who runs Salesforce is the one who did that. And you're telling us that that is so crazy to me.
It is crazy, especially when the Georgia law basically says the voter registration is a function of the county. It is not a function of the state. Yeah. And we've been to court so many times about, the voter rolls and geolocation and all this crap, where voters are being charged with voting in a different precinct than they're assigned, but that's because the GIS data is wrong and all this crap. And this is Secretary of State is the one responsible for the maladministration and misinformation on the voter rolls. And again, it's a county function. Nothing in the election law in Title 21 or Title 50 or the Georgia Constitution gives the Secretary of State's office that authority in the first place. Yeah. So this gets it back to the people, because then the people are in charge of maintaining their electees to the election board. The other thing that we have is we have a network of election lawyers that work at the county level, who apparently work for somebody in China. I'm assuming they're paid by the Chinese to misquote the election code and give bad advice to all the board of election members. I've got one video on one of my channels. Well,
that's a good point, though. That's a great point that happened. So like let's let that sit for a second. There are influences that try and help make people misinterpret basic laws in a way that will favor everything outside of the people and the local power that they have. Communist infiltration happens at the local level, where people aren't paying attention, and that's kind of sounds like what you're describing there to me. Continue.
Well, if you want to go that route, we can talk about from 1913 forward. So yes, and that's the thing, is like getting things back to the county level, and actually trying to hold any of the county election attorneys accountable through bar complaints is another joke. because the Georgia bar is the most corrupt
I'm sure it is.
organization, right next to the
Makes sense.
Department of Education, next to the Secretary of State's office.
We're Gotham City down here in Fulton County.
Oh my
Atlanta, is
God.
what we are.
So to get people reacquainted with their role in maintaining our republic is really the key to maintaining the American dream. Getting people to understand how government is supposed to work and their civic duty to be not only informed, but to be part of and a participant in local governance. The whole system was supposed to be, like community based, which goes right back to our precincts. Our precincts are based on what they call militia districts. Our militia districts were like our little small defensible towns where a group of people with like-mindedness would congregate and associate and build a community of like-minded individuals. And those like-minded individuals through their community would have a community government, and they would vote in their community, and those votes would be counted, and then there you go. That's what we need to get back to. The other thing that we have a big problem with, and this isn't really part of the Secretary of State's office, but repealing the 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment is the direct election of senators. Here again, this gets back to the design. I mean, if anyone with the computer, when the computer starts breaking, what do? You shut it down and restart it. You reboot the computer. We need a complete reboot to the original design of the Constitution and the 10 Amendments, the first Bill of Rights.
Let me stop you right there. That concept is an ad. That rebooting the election system in Georgia, I would use, because that's a visual ad that you can actually turn into like a 30-second ad. I'm just putting that in your mind. Continue.
So the 17th Amendment was for the direct election of senators by the voting populace. Under the original construction of the Constitution, senators were appointed by the states. So it was like the House of Commons and the House of Lords, like the English model of the bicameral House. Bicameral means two rooms for those that don't speak Latin. Uber, semper, ubi, sububi. Always wear underwear. So the thing is, like the states, each state is originally was its own sovereign nation, and actually, constructionally speaking, each state is still their own sovereign nation, even though they agreed through the Constitution to abide by every other state's laws. The federal government was really only put there to maintain defense, have a system of settling disputes among the states, which is the Supreme Court, to regulate trade, to make sure it's fair along all the states, and to do treaties. And that was the role of the federal government. Now we have the federal government doing everything, and part of that has to do with the senators being directly elected and not accountable to the states. So if we eliminated the 17th Amendment and had our senators appointed by the legislators of each state, we'd have much closer representation of what the people actually want, instead of being bought and paid for by big pharma, big ag, et cetera,
so you're
et cetera.
saying get rid of the ability for these senators to run these mass funded campaigns to get elected, and you wouldn't have the Lindsey Grahams of the world always in there.
Oh my God!
So
Yes.
if the people will have more power because it's not bought basically by
Right, and it's more controlled because the governor of the state can call up Washington, dude. If you vote yes for this, we're recalling you immediately. They don't have that power.
That is absolutely more power to the states. I think that's a wonderful thing to present to the people. And,
right.
Yeah.
And that way we don't have like 3 or 4, what do they call it, the Eastern Seaboard and the West Coast running the country.
Right. And that's really the whole thing is it's the idea of making people, feel like they're selecting somebody, electing them without them actually.
What we want is representation.
Yeah.
And this whole thing, like the Save America Act that's going on right now, we wouldn't need the Save America Act if Georgia actually did make sure that the only people voting were actual citizens, and that they're actually voting one vote per person, and making sure that the people they're voting for are actually viable candidates and not bought off by some big money interest. We'd be a lot better off. So that's what my fix is like, teach people the intent of the U.S. Constitution, and then the power of the people is, we the people are the government, but we're not participating. Therefore, they're walking all over us. Nobody's holding them accountable because we don't know what they're supposed to do in the first place.
Educate, participate, regain control. Sounds like
that's it.
And yes, I think that, so the ideas you're presenting, I really like them, especially like the idea of the public, the ballot counting as people can watch it, because that's what you have to have. You have to have that transparency. And so for me, what I'm thinking about, and this isn't necessarily a question you respond to, however, I'm just thinking about like the practicality of the ideas are good. How do we convey those ideas? How do we show how you're going to make this happen despite the efforts against you? And, how do we inspire people to want to come join this kind of fight, Because people are fighting for something. You watch these protests all the time. You see these indivisible people. I watch a lot of these protests. I go to their trainings, and they compel people to go do these things that are against their best interest, that are profiting the people that are organizing them. And it's like these people are looking for something to do, and they're just being reached by these people who know how to appeal to them that maybe don't really have their best interests involved. And what I'm trying to think about is how do we match that effort, and how do we reach people and capture their attention away and show them that these ideas are the ones that are going to inspire them. And starting with, you had a couple things I thought were interesting. The education process. So how can we make that more connectable and relatable to younger generations? And I'm thinking stunt politics is everything right now. Trump is a rebrander in chief. That's what he's always been good at. And everybody tries to be as good as him at it. And this idea that really sticks in my mind, and I'd love to see some kind of ad, knowing, by the way, if you guys care about these things that you're listening to, go look at Ted's platform, go to his website, tedmetz.com, support him, help him. Ted is the real deal. Ted's not funded by a bunch of special interests. He's genuine at heart. He has great ideas, but the funding is going to be more difficult for candidates like Ted and people who are actually not having their strings pulled. So we got to have guerrilla efforts to do video and public stunts that can capture attention, and those need resources. So my thinking is, how do we do that? How do we make some sort of stunt that stands out? Because most stunts are bullshit. Let's do a fucking real deal stunt. Excuse my language. And that's not necessarily a question. That's just me speculating out loud, because I've been talking to some libertarian candidates for other things, and other candidates that I believe in their ideas, but I don't believe, based on what I've heard from many of them, that they're going to get any attention to them. And so I'm trying to throw my thinking from a performative standpoint, because I'm a performer, I always have been, into that.
Do this.
And I would just love to see some of these ideas get more attention.
I'm gonna show you one of the things that this is something else that I've been doing for quite a while lately, is filing lawsuits.
All right.
I'm going to pull this up.
I like that.
I'm going to open this. Let's see if it'll load. Okay. Can you share this, or do I have to share this?
Yeah, I can share it.
Yeah, share it full screen.
Okay.
All right. I guess since shortly after the 2020 election, again, I've been doing deep dives into the law. And with my law partners, one of them died. His name was Paul Nally. I filed my first lawsuit, I guess, in 2021 after the election. It might have been sooner than that. I guess it was 2018, because you remember in 2018 we had the Sarah Riggs Amico race. She was running for like lieutenant governor, and the drop off between the governor's race and her race was like hundreds of thousands of votes. like a huge percentage of the vote, and something wasn't right, and my vote was not right either. So that was the first lawsuit I filed, was after the 2018 election. Anyway, moving forward, my partners and I have been filing lawsuits. We have been doing petitions. We've sent ad litem notices. Ad litem is like prior to litigation notices to all boards of elections in all 159 counties. We've served petitions at the legislature. We've been all over the place. We've sued Brad Raffensperger. We've sued Kemp. I've been doing a lot of lawsuits, and I'm going to have most of them posted on my website as soon as I get around to getting them all posted. But this is one of the most recent ones I filed. My partner and I, Sarah Thompson and I, if you read this was we filed this right after the Fulton County warehouse was raided.
Mm-hmm.
And what this is an emergency motion and memorandum of law to recognize crime and fraud upon the court involving unlawful search and seizure of state property and records not produced per Article 1 constitutional prescriptions for federal elections. What our contention is, and what we have proven illegal from a legal standpoint, is that we, as I said at the beginning of the show, we have not had a lawful election since we went away from hand-marked paper ballots.
Yeah.
Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution says, let's see if I can present another one. Let's do another image file.
I'll take this one down. You should be able to present.
Article 1, Section 1, open. Okay, put that one up.
All right.
Article 1, Section 1, Article 1, Section 1, Clause, Section 4, Article 1, Section 4. The time, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But this is where everybody misses this part. The Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations, except for the places of choosing senators. That means they can alter the time and they can alter the manner. The time has been set as the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November, right?
Yeah.
They have yet to change election day. Under federal law, election day is still election day, not election week, not early voting, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Following that up,
so what you're saying is,
here's the next one.
It takes weeks to vote. That's not something that's constitutional, is what you're saying. It should
Correct.
happen in a day.
All right, can you do the next one that I just loaded? 2 USC 9 is the law for how conducting federal elections. All votes for representatives in Congress must be by written or printed ballot or voting machine, the use of which has been duly authorized by the state law. And all votes received or recorded contrary to this section shall be of no effect. 1899, see this one that says, or by voting machine. Mm-hmm. In 1899, when this law was passed, the voting machine was a lever machine, which was patented back in the 1880s. In Georgia code, voting machine is still defined in 21.2.2 parentheses 40. Voting machines, also known as a lever machine.
Mm-hmm.
We have never had any other kind of machines that were constitutionally authorized by the state since they got away from the lever machine.
Right.
And that means that the Dominion system, or I'm sorry, the Diebold DRE system was never a constitutional method of voting.
Mm-hmm.
And nor are the Dominion system. It is not a voting machine. It is an electronic system.
It's a hackable computer. Is what
it is a hackable computer. So, where did we get off going on this? Let's go right here.
What you're
and the long
here,
and the short of it is, in 2020, Um, 2020, there was a Supreme Court case known as Rodham versus Athens Clark County. Can you share that next slide?
Yeah. Let's see.
And the Georgia Supreme Court basically said optical scanning voting systems and electronic ballot markers are technologies that assist election boards in conducting elections via paper ballots. In that regard, they are simply an adjunct to an election conducted with paper ballots, not a substitute for paper ballots. So you can take that down. And so what we're saying here is, with the case that I just presented, what was collected at Fulton County was fraudulent bullshit paper.
Yeah,
there was never an election because it wasn't held on paper ballots marked in pencil or pen.
Right. No, I would agree with that. And you have the constitutional basis and the legal basis here that it's supposed to be, voting is supposed to happen in a day, not weeks. The machines they're not constitutional. It's hand paper ballots are the way, and they always have been the way. And I know enough about it now to know this. You do. I didn't before, but through you and through people like Garland Favorito, I was educated through it. My concern is that a lot of people still aren't, especially younger people, still aren't educated to this, and their mindset. Even if you ask them, do you care about the Constitution? Maybe they'll say yes. From my experiences talking to people who are in the younger generation, they don't know that much about the Constitution. Many of them don't even read.
Or even capable of any kind of reading comprehension.
Well, I think they do have reading comprehension. I think that they communicate information through different forms, and I think that because people's attention span is so short, that the new form of giving information out are through these kind of short form videos and there's other stuff. I'm not saying everybody doesn't read, and I don't mean they don't read ever. I just mean that the competition. The competition is putting their money in the types of communications that appeals to them. And so I'm seeing what you're saying. I completely agree with it. I'm just thinking about what attention gathering thing can be done. And I'm going to continue to say that because that's
well, and I appreciate that. Excuse me one second. I'll still be talking.
Oh, go for it.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely having some help creating some short videos, some educational videos. I'm planning to do that. I'm just not sure.
No, it's a challenge doing that, but all of this stuff. So my focus, would be like, what are the creative resources I have and the people that I have that can help me condense what you're telling me right now into something that is easily digestible through these modern forms of communication, also by younger generations. Because I think that.
Is that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that know this stuff who I think are going to be on board with it. And then I'm just thinking about the winnable votes. And I think the winnable votes, the way the Democrats always do it when these elections come around, the midterms, is they go to clubs. I'm not saying we should do this, but I'm just kind of talking out loud about their tactics. And they go find drunk people and they get them signed up and they say, come get on this bus to go vote on this day. And they tell them that they're being oppressed and all that, the Stacey Abrams model. And I'm just thinking about the targeting of winnable votes who aren't educated yet on how things work, and they're being intercepted by these progressives and kind of communists in some cases, and their education is being given to them by them. And I believe in what you're saying, and I'm just thinking about how can that be prevented from happening. And this information that helps them understand how the Constitution empowers them, and how if they want, they're not it's definitely a challenge, but I think it's worth discussing.
So what we kind of need is like a Power Rangers, Fantastic Four crossover cartoon.
Dude, absolutely. So you need the knowledge that you have, and like Garland, and you need somebody who can understand that and translate it into a way where it can be communicated,
easily digestible, easily communicatable, repeatable, perishable.
Right. And that's the challenge, in my opinion. Yeah,
it's definitely a challenge because a lot of people have been I say brainwashed, but I really mean hypnotized into believing a bunch of stuff that's not true.
Absolutely.
You can take that slide down.
It drives me crazy.
You can take that slide down.
I'll take it down. Yeah, just give me a second. It drives me crazy when people communication forms critical. Yeah, I'd agree. Agreeminator. It just because I hear it all the time. I'll talk to people and they'll say with such confidence, they'll assert things are true that are the basis of other beliefs. I'm just like, the foundation of this argument that you're making and the foundation upon the foundation and the assumption upon assumption, none of it is true. None of it is true, and you're confident in all of it. And it's and I'll ask people where they get their information from, and it's always based on some bullshit.
Read it on the back of a cereal box.
It's usually some sensational influencer who has they're just manipulating people for profit mostly. And
right, you're familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wish you had that slide up. Essentially, the Dunning-Kruger effect is a repeatable psychological experiment wherein you can actually graph the confidence level of people with their knowledge. Say, like somebody thinks they know about, well, I don't know. Let's
the dumber they are, the more confident they are in what they know.
Right. That's a good nutshell.
Yeah.
Because the more you learn, the less confident in the information that you
right.
know, because that may not be right, because you've learned through all this extra learning that that person may not have been an actual legitimate purveyor of knowledge, such as like if you look at scientific studies, like 90% of the scientific studies are not repeatable. They're peer reviewed, but nobody can repeat and get the same results. Everyone knows that water is wet, and that's pretty easy. But can you definitely say there's like 77 picometers between a quark and a
but you have these people say this stuff with confidence, and they draw a conclusion, and then the con artists will connect it to people's personal lives, and they'll use these conclusions from scientific papers like you're discussing that can't be repeatable as some sort of
safe and effective, safest, most secure 100%. Election ever.
That's right. No, both of those are exactly. And so, no, I'm just envisioning like these. I think there's really something there. You said there's a video that happened today with the ballots, but I think there's really something there in the transparency of people sitting around and you're watching the counters. And I think that can be turned into some sort of short ad that can be fun and sensational, but also get the point across. That might not even be very expensive to do something like that. I think that's what I'm thinking. One avenue anyway. I don't know. I'm always brainstorming this stuff, and I think we have
right.
To.
And I do kind of have a long list of campaign positions that I would like to do real shorts on each one. It's like,
yeah,
this is why it was done this way. We did this way. I mean, like they've been doing paper ballots ever since they invented paper.
Right.
Even drawing straw is more effective than an electronic system. My first IT class at Georgia State, I'm trying to remember when was that, like 1989 maybe, was my first computer science class. It was even before they call it IT, and the first after the professor like introduced himself, welcome class, this is whatever computer science 101. If you can keep track of your system on knots on a string, you don't need a computer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's really when it comes down to, we don't need a computerized system to keep track of marks on a piece of paper, because humans can count.
It's convoluted.
Even though in Fulton County, people have to like take off their shoes and socks to count to 20. Apparently, But
So I've always been perplexed by that. The Democrats used to advocate for hand counted ballots. It just switches as depending on who's in power and whatnot. And I
well, and that's
remember,
just it. The Carter Baker report. President Carter and James Baker did this report on mail-in ballots. I want to say like maybe in the 80s, and said it was the most insecure, most unsafe method of voting, and it should never be implemented. And that, Carter and Baker were both Democrats.
yeah,
And of course the reason they switched is because the the people that I don't know, like the overlords of the Democrats, knows that the Democrats have drifted so far away from serving the people that they could never get elected, so they have to cheat.
It's the
And
best.
same way with the incumbents. The incumbents
Yeah.
know that they couldn't win another election because the people are sick of their BS.
It seems so obvious to me the desire to have these electronic systems is because they're all hackable and you can rig things. I remember when iPhone started saying to save your stuff, your pictures to the cloud, and my initial reaction way back then, I said, absolutely not. That's just a setup. It's going to be hackable. Fast forward, and it was called the fappening, and all these people, these celebrities' naked photos are leaked onto this thing. I was like, that was the obvious conclusion to this. Everything is so hackable all the time, and if you're connecting something to the web or the cloud, the expectation for me is that I don't care if somebody sees it because I know that it's hackable and manipulatable, actually. And so to have this idea that elections are safer by electronic communications, that the only thing we've ever proven through this type of stuff is that it can be hacked and manipulated, is crazy to me. I remember at one of the election board meetings, I don't know, about a year and a half ago or something, I was at one of them and they were arguing, the left was arguing against the hand counted ballots. And this woman gets up there to do her 2-minute public speech. And she carries all these papers. She's got these papers in her hand. It's like, she's like, do you see how many papers I have here? And it's, I would have to count all of these. And she started talking about the paper cuts and one individual having to, I'm just like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's a public stunt is what she was doing to try and make something that's not difficult seem like it's difficult and dangerous with paper cuts. And there's probably some people who were like, oh my God, I never realized a stack would be that big and didn't even think beyond that. And that stupid stunt, while stupid, was a little bit effective. And I go back to it. How do we counter that stupidity? With stunts that are better, I'm all
Well,
about
I
what
have
you're saying,
a
Ted. I'm
couple
just
answers
about
on
to-
that. It's like,
Yeah,
the oh gosh,
I don't expect
you
you to have the
might.
answer right now
Are you
'cause
going
I'm
to cut?
throwing a
Are you
lot
going to
out.
cut any of this? Because I would give you a snark answer now.
Well, don't you see? I think the snark answer is good. I think that's what gets attention. Wouldn't you want people to hear what you really believe, like what you snarkily
Well,
believe?
no, it's just a snark answer, so I'm not going to repeat it. But it had something to do with injecting mRNA.
Well, okay. I don't disagree with. I mean, I think the connection to just take the jab is all these propaganda. Of course, people want the thing to work, but of course, there's going to be side effects. And to tell people that there's not going to be is obviously a lie. And all of these people like to engage in these deceptive practices to prevent what you're saying from happening, from the real election, from the real ballots being counted, from people understanding their constitutional rights and the power it gives them. They want them distracted from all of that through this propaganda. And what I'm going to continue to harp on, and I'm not just doing this with you, I'm doing this on every show I go on with candidates for anything, is the ideas are there. They're right. The people are right. You're smart. You understand this. You get it. Like you have the experience with it. How do the communication strategies to bring you guys to the forefront in people's minds? And I don't know the answer. I'm just trying to get the conversation going with all of it because I love the ideas you guys have.
Well, here again, I think getting back to the fundamentals of what has always worked and what will always work in the future is, for crying out loud, I would not mind chipping hieroglyphs into a rock that'll last for a millennia. Right? That might be an even better way to vote. It's like chipping something into stone.
Yeah, right. Change the
'Cause
voting age
nobody-
to 30. How about that too? I'm
Well,
kidding. Yeah, yeah.
well,
You're
and
right.
this is the other
That's
thing is, I don't think many under 30s are voting anyway.
Oh, I think they're voting Democrat because the Democrats are targeting them. They're getting
Well,
them to
they're getting
drive.
paid.
Yeah,
They're getting paid.
yeah.
And the other thing that I really think is the most important for people to understand, and people start like really thinking hard about, is like, why are people spending millions and millions of dollars for a job that pays $100,000 a year? Why is there one guy who I'm getting like mail from every day running for governor
That's right.
when he's never been in government at all, and he
Okay.
runs he's working within an industry that does not have our best health interests at heart.
Who are you talking about?
I'm not going to say his name, but I know darn well you've probably gotten 3 mailers from him.
I get mailers all the time. People knock on my door, and I say, "How much you getting paid?"
Somebody that you've never heard of before suddenly running for governor.
Look, so I totally get it. I intended to. I was going to either run for governor or against John Ossoff as a Democrat in the primary, specifically not to win. My whole platform was me. I don't want to win. Don't vote for me. What I want, because I know information about these people. I've researched them for years, and I know that the public voting for them does not know that information. And my whole platform was going to be, I'm just here to help you publicly vet them in kind of a sensational way, because that's what I'm good at, and I have information about them. Don't vote for me, but also listen to my podcast. It'd be a jokey but also informative type of thing where it's full disclosure. I'm just trying to help you understand what you don't know. And then I discovered that the libertarians don't have ballot access, so I couldn't go over there and try and be the gubernatorial candidate, which I like Chase Oliver, but I think I could have drawn a lot more attention to it, but they're not going to be on the ballot. And then when it comes to running as a Democrat, it's a $5,000 barrier just to get on the ballot. So the barrier to run for office is it's a little higher than I think people realize. And these organizations, they select people who they think have star appeal, like an AOC or whoever, and they fund them to do that. So they act like anybody can run for office, and they can run.
Well,
for
like
offices.
maybe let's get somebody in there who has crowd appeal because they're good looking, and maybe their father was famous, and everybody likes football. Let's make him the governor
you're talking
candidate.
about Dooley is who you're talking about.
I didn't mention any names, did I?
I am mentioning it because I did notice Dooley running, and I'm a tech.
Well,
fan,
and that's just it. I was like, okay, let's put somebody up there who
name recognition,
who is electable, but we can totally control because they don't know anything at all about government, and there are a lot of candidates
agree.
like that.
And
there are candidates on the ballot that are running for Secretary of State right now who have absolutely every need to be in an orange suit.
Okay, so that's interesting. Do you want to elaborate, or do you want to keep that there?
Well, one guy has been working. One candidate, and you may be able to figure out who it was, had been working for the Secretary of State's office, and then took a leave of absence to be a contractor during the Dominion system implementation, and then after that was done, he went back to the Secretary of State's office.
So he's working with Brad Raffensperger.
He was working with Kemp before that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting.
And Ryan Germany and that crew now with Charlene McGowan and that crew. And then another guy who has been in the legislature and has had the opportunity to bring forward legislation to get rid of the electronic systems for the last, since the implementation of the Dominion system. Why is he running? He still wants to control elections. And then you got a guy who was actually indicted on corruption charges during his tenure on a county commission. Why is he running? He used to be a Democrat. And then you got this other unknown person whose only connection to elections is his wife's appointment to some board. See, I didn't mention any names.
No, but
and then there's me, and I've been in the space for 14 or 15 years.
Look, I'm just going to put the idea out there. You take from it what you want. What I just said I was going to do if I were to run, which would be strictly to publicly vet, because the media is not going to do it. the people asking the questions at the debate are not going to do it because they have an allegiance one way or another, depending on which network they're from, or the AJC or whoever. They aren't going to ask the right questions.
That's because they don't know the law. They don't. Yeah,
Well, they
that's
don't know
exactly
the law.
right. And I already developed the strategy is that, they're going to ask you a question. I'm going to say, are you just stupid, or did somebody pay you to ask that question? Because the answer is that if we followed the law, and I can actually cite, sections of the election code, of the Constitution, of U.S. code, and say, look,
well, you can cite the code.
under 21-2-437 says that we hand count at the precinct on election day. 21-2-300 says.
With. Are the other people going to go against hand counted ballots, or is it going to be? Are other people going to also promote that?
Well, there's one guy who's saying, okay, well, I promise to get rid of the machines by 2029 after the contract ends.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got other guys who are talking, oh, we can just modify the software. Oh, we'll just do.
Ted, I would say go after them. So if I'm somebody who is just. If I'm watching some ads and I'm trying to see about because Secretary of State is an important position, so they're obviously going to send people there. They don't just want to let anybody take over that position. It's important. Obviously, we saw how important it is the past couple of elections, and we see. I mean, the guy's all over CNN. I mean, he's became famous because of his position here, and so we saw other states highlight the race for Secretary of State. I didn't know until you just told me that there was someone who used to work for Brad Raffensperger who's running. And of course, that makes perfect sense to me. I feel stupid for not considering that. And so that right there, I think is an important thing for people to know, because Brad Raffensperger, in a lot of people's eyes, was very, very corrupt. And if they knew that there was an association there, that's going to raise skepticism to who that candidate is, and they should know that.
His predecessor was even more corrupt, and look at the higher office that he went to.
No, I get it. But you say you don't want to say these names. I say the strategy is say the names and tell them what you know about the names. I say go after them, because if you combine going after them, and not going after them in a mean way, just telling the truth. You just tell the truth about them, and you combine that with telling your solutions, then that helps to show, to differentiate. Is you got people coming in trying to co-opt something under the guise of an individual who's not connected to these past institutional powers, but you can kind of break that down a little bit, because I guarantee you most people don't know what you just told me.
And that gets back to the one guy who's been working in the Secretary of State's office all this time. He thinks that he knows everything.
Well, that's what
all he really knows.
It's good information.
How to make sure that the counties comply with what the Secretary of
I
State
say go hard. I say go hard at him, Ted.
Authority to do that. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, definitely. And I know I already have a lot of grassroots support, because people have seen me. I have, I have hundreds of hours of video from various events where experts on the subject have been telling us the truth about what's really going on in the elections since.
You're right.
Since well before 2020. I've got recordings going back to 2012.
Your credibility is not in question. Your knowledge is not in question. Your ability to do it is not in question at all.
But my bank account makes me questionable, because I don't have
your
the millions
and
millions of
to
dollars
it versus their ability. The people trying to co-opt it have the bank accounts. They have the connect. I did not know that because I was thinking about the Secretary of State, and I haven't researched it a ton, but Brad Raffensperger was a controllable asset for a very, very long time. And that's, to me, that's very, I'm not going to say that I could prove that in court, although if I had time, I could. He's not someone who was.
Go ahead, because the point I was really
I looked into his background. His background is one of the sketchiest backgrounds I've ever seen. He looks like he was placed here by, people, by an organization, institution in Virginia.
Like the Bilderberg group or something.
3 letters is what it looks like. Is what he's put. A 3-letter organization might have placed him here. And you look into his background. I always thought that the question asked Brad Raffensperger is to say, hey, can you tell us a little bit of details about your mother and father and your history, and for growing up in Virginia, and why your brother went to college in Canada? And were you born in Canada? Or were you born in Virginia? Because there's no actual hard evidence. That's what I would have done with him. Nobody ever asked him those questions.
Well, yeah, and the question I would have asked him is like, did you go to college in Canada to avoid the Vietnam draft?
That'd be another good question. Nobody ever asked those questions.
What I wanted to, the point I was trying to make earlier is that we need to get people to really think about how much money are these guys spending on the elections? Why is this guy trying,
where they get their
why
money
is this
from?
guy spamming me so hard to get a job?
Yeah, where's he getting it from? Because they don't want this to. So those questions we just brought up about Brad Raffensperger, which are legitimate that the AJC or nobody else ever asked, are the questions that can be asked about these other candidates that have all this money. So also, where's the money coming from? But also, these types of questions that nobody else is going to ask are ones you can ask as a candidate. I would go hard. I'd go hard in the paint.
Oh, absolutely. And I've already been having some fun at some of the meetups I've been speaking at. They keep talking about how expensive elections are and blah, blah, blah. It's like, how much is, a box of paper with 10,000 sheets of paper
Right.
is about $30. All right. Now, how much in I can't remember, I guess was the 24 election. They had a statewide call for volunteers to help the recount. Over 40,000 people in Georgia volunteered, no pay, to come and help with the recount.
Yeah.
Why are we paying people who have contracts,
right.
who have like conflicts of interests, to pay people to come in and do the counting?
Yep.
I'm not talking about Stacey Abrams and happy faces necessarily, but I just found out, and I believe it's reliable information, that in the 2024 recount in Fulton County, the staffing agency that was used to supply people to do that recount was owned by none other than Brad Raffensperger's wife.
Another interesting figure in the whole Brad Raffensperger story. And look, thanks for talking to us today, Ted. I support you. I think that you have the wisdom, you have the knowledge. The modern communication strategy. People need to know that the other candidates that seem more polished and have polished websites and have big funding, because that appearance is what gets these votes with them. The way to contrast that, in my opinion, to combat it, is a combination of saying who they really are, because they're not going to, and not in a mean way. You just present the factual information that they cannot argue with, and people go, "Oh, I didn't know," like I just did. I just went, "Oh, I didn't know that," and then saying, "Now here's what would work, and here's how we can be successful at doing it." Like that idea of the you're in the public square, and I'm looking at it as a party, honestly, the way I'm envisioning it. Let's have a party. It's like we're all going to watch. It's going to be the biggest thing we live stream, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to play bingo with it when it comes to counting the votes publicly. Because I really think that's a program people would get into if it was marketed and packaged the right way. So I think that's a really good idea, and I think it needs to be combined with highlighting who these other people really are. So thanks for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you again, tedmetz.com, how they can help you, and anything else you want to end with in closing.
All right. I will say that my website has really not been updated too much since my 2022 run. So tedmetz.com is live and active. I am on Twitter. Formerly known as X, as Ted Metz for Georgia. I have a Ted Metz for Georgia on Facebook. I'm Ted Metz on Instagram, Ted Metz 667799 on, I want to say, did I say TikTok already?
I don't think so.
But I'm easy to find. You can just Google Ted Metz. I'm all over the place. What I didn't get to talk about was some of the other organizations that I work with, but I'll have all that information on my website. I'll have most of the relevant court cases that we filed over the last 5 or 6 years. This is the primary. Election day is actually the 19th of May. I
Yeah, I
wanted
think
to
that's
say
right.
June. May 19th. Last day to register for the primary is the 20th of April. Again, this is a primary, so we're expecting really low voter turnout.
But it's
My
winnable though. Primary being
my
winnable.
my target audience is the super voters, the people that always vote in primaries.
Who is that
Uh,
demographic?
Generally speaking, 35 to 70-year-olds.
Okay.
For whatever reason, when I was young, the local news stations actually used to broadcast well in advance of elections, election day, who the primary, who the candidates were. Have you noticed they never do that? That's
Yeah, they
because
would
they've
never do.
gone to paid advertising.
See, they don't like it. It's like pulling teeth trying to figure out who all the candidates are now.
Right, and a lot of the places you go to, like Wikipedia, Ballotopedia, they're not always correct, and
Mm-mm.
they don't show all the information.
And people go to
So,
ChatGPT, which is wrong like half the time at least.
or Grok.
Yeah.
So tedmetz.com is a good starting place. I am on X. I am on Facebook. I haven't posted a whole lot yet. We were talking about that before. I just finished my logo design, which is kind of like the first step in actually launching a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So
And you're a small
this is
operation. You
really
need it.
this
Yeah.
is really you're looking at it right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
No, I get
this
it. Empathize with it, man. It's tough.
this video is like one of the first media presentations I've given.
We'll
So
come
this
back in a
is going
month or
to
so
help.
before, and we'll do it again, and we'll hammer it home as it's getting closer. One last question: visit tedmetz.com. Help Ted if you support his views, his ideas, and support him because we don't have a big operation behind candidates like this. And Ted's a good guy. He's got the right ideas. Were the libertarians mad at you for switching parties or because to run?
Well,
Because you
this is
weren't. They
where
didn't have ballot access.
I don't know about the rank and file, but the leadership kind of understands, because again, this is a really special situation in that we don't have, the Republicans are not offering any strong candidates. It's the same old BS field of, okay, we're putting this guy in to take votes away from this guy. We're
Right.
putting this guy is running because his ego is so large, and this guy's running because he's got name recognition. But here again, they're all part of the system. They're not part of the grassroots. We, the people, the actual government, the constitutional government that we deserve, if we only voted with our hearts and our minds rather than our brainwashing. So with that, thank you for having me on, Brad.
Thanks for coming on the show, Ted. I will restream this tomorrow. I'll cut out the audio glitches in the beginning, and I'll restream it tomorrow as well. And we'll have you back on again closer to Election Day. I appreciate it, and good luck with your efforts.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Thanks for the comments in the chats and the questions, guys. We will talk to y'all later this week. You guys have a fantastic rest of y'all's day. TedMetz.com. Check them out.
Bye now.